Hey everybody, welcome back to College of Lore. I'm Cass.
I am the Penitent.
We are here with our channel, with our brand, to do yet another video in our series, Let's Talk About. In our last video, we talked about Drow, and we alluded to what we're going to talk about in this one, and we're going to talk about it.
Talking about a guy and his pet cat.
Yeah. Drizzt Do'urden, who has some media outside of D&D, obviously,
Yes.
but is a character that is referenced frequently in D&D media.
He is fairly famous for being the protagonist of the Legend of Drizzt series. It is a 37-book, as of August 2021, series.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of them.
Set in the D&D setting.
Yes.
He is also at least vaguely mentioned in several D&D modules.
He's mentioned in Storm King's Thunder. I'm sure there are others.
No, actually.
Oh, is he not?
No, that is something
Right, just someone in his group is.
Yes.
That's fine. I don't know anything. What other ones has he mentioned indirectly?
You know, you're putting me on the spot.
Oh, okay. Things related to him, at least, are referenced in D&D
Jarlaxle.
Jarlaxle, yeah. Jarlaxle's in the Waterdeep ones.
Yes.
As one of the, factions, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Arshnag is in Storm King's Thunder, who is someone that Drizzt knows.
But yeah.
And the rest of the group is kind of referenced, I think, to a degree.
But yes, so Drizzt...
He has a pet cat.
Yes.
Little kitty, meow.
Drizzt is the leader of... Drizzt is... What's the word I'm looking for? An adventurer, by trade. He is a Drow who rejected the influence of Lolth, and left the Underdark to go pursue an adventuring life on the surface, forming a group called the Companions of the Hall.
Who have a lot of other names, apparently.
Yes, chief among them, the Grey Hands.
Yes.
And largely, he is the protagonist of a lot of D&D related media.
Yeah.
And he has his own set of Magic the Gathering cards.
He has his own set of Magic the Gathering cards, which are also often a thing that is related to D&D, although they aren't in D&D media direct. Not the cards. Some of the settings, though.
Yeah.
A lot of the, planes and stuff have, D&D expansions that are written about them and related to them. There's some races that have to do with that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But yeah.
We play some of those sometimes. Aetherborn is a magic race, right? And
so
I love Aetherborn, yeah.
But yeah.
Irrelevant.
Drizzt is one of the more publicly noted figures in D&D canon.
Yeah.
There is art of him. He is a ranger with a... that is actually a statue that's a lot of lore I don't want to get into.
A panther, not a cat, technically.
Yes, panther.
Panthers are big cats, but, it is a panther, it's not just a little guy. Just a little kitty cat who follows him around.
Yeah. So, I guess the big thing, why does he matter?
So one of the big reasons that Drizzt is kind of relevant is he is one of, if not the only big example of good Drow in D&D media, which is important, and we talked about that in the last video. Please add more of those in your D&D media. Official D&D lore, he's by and large the greatest shining example of how to play a Drow that is actually a good person.
And an interracial relationship.
Yes, which is also super cool. He is a leader, he is a person who understands what it's like to be subjugated and marginalized and tries to rise above that. At least in how it should be told. I have not read all of the books, He is the kind of person who fights for people in similar situations. He is an advocate, he is an adventurer who brings respect to people like him in a way that people wouldn't probably have otherwise in that kind of setting. Which is really important. He's representation. He's positive representation, both in and out of that source material. Which is huge.
Yeah, I know people are going to be like, oh, positive representation for a race that isn't real, but
Okay, but it's still... There's analogs.
Yes.
There's real-world cultural and racial analogs for that.
Yeah, it's thinking uncritically to say otherwise.
Yeah, it is. And it matters. And I'm glad that they have that, and I think maybe they should have more of it. But I am glad that that exists and is a thing. So yeah, beyond that, what else do we have to say about Drizzt?
Well, he is notably one of the favorite characters of mine.
Yes.
To add into home games.
He's awesome to add into home games, especially because there are references to him in some modules, or at least people he knows. If you run into one of those characters, there's a logical conclusion to follow that you might someday run into Drizzt, or at least have him be referenced heavily. You know, if that game runs on for a while, which we've done in several of our home games. The one that we had it happen in, namely, was Storm King's Thunder, where obviously we talked about you meet a friend of his, a companion of his.
I'd love to put him with Harshnag in that module.
I do too.
I love
Or at least it's centered around that somewhere in the vicinity.
And I am shamelessly ripping off of Chris Perkins.
Yes.
Who's done that on a streamed game before. But it's such a good choice.
It is. There are good places to insert things like that, and it makes them really interesting. It gives a lot of life to the setting to use characters that are referenced in source media and source material. In a home game, it kind of adds an understanding of the setting you're in, and it's really useful to use someone like Drizzt as a way to build that setting.
And Drizzt is also a character with a lot of history that you can pull from. And one of my favorite things to do is take an older 300-400-year-old Drizzt, who's been through a lot, who's lost a lot of people, who's lost most of his original party at that point, and see how he changes, and use him as a mentor to some, and use him as someone whose shell gets softened by others, you know. I've had him basically join a party after a lot of his party was killed. I've had him... You guys have had him... You have had him serve as a, like... follow along in the campaign, the first story, Lazarak's New Hill. He and his group, his adventuring party, kind of joined forces with the other party temporarily to accomplish some similar goals that all kind of fell in line with each other. You know, he ended up falling in love with one of the PCs in that game.
Yes.
And
we've done other things with Drizzt romance.
We've had another character be his canonical love interest reincarnated.
Yes, which was super fun. That was a great story arc. But there are a ton of ways to kind of use that in a home game to tell more of an immersive story. I think something that can be really fun with characters like that with older, more established adventures is a mentoring role, or it's almost like I see all of these little baby adventurers that are about to throw their lives in danger over something they have no idea what they're getting into. I'm gonna just adopt these real quick.
Yes.
Just kind of scooping them up and carrying them away from harm.
People like to say that Drizzt is the, like, default, edgy loner PC.
Really think that.
I don't think it's a very good understanding of his character.
I mean, clearly he has friends, he has people he cares about.
You know, I understand you see Dark Elf with swords and a panther, and you're like, okay.
Okay, that's kind of edgy, yeah.
Yeah, this guy's an edgelord. And
Not
I think
necessarily.
A lot of people who have that will kind of latch onto that, and they'll make basically poorly executed Drizzt as their first character.
Yeah. Which, you know, that's fine, but...
is actually a really good example to show players who make characters like that, who make the kind of edgy loner type that doesn't...
How that can evolve, yeah.
Because, you know, Drizzt didn't come to the surface meaning
to make friends and fall in love. No, he came to the surface to adventure, and along the way he found connection with people who accepted and understood him. And that is something we very much try to emulate in both of our collective sets of characters. I have played a lot of characters that kind of fit that traditional edgy loner archetype to a degree, and actually in one of the games where I played a character like that, notably, that was the same game where Drizzt had a reincarnated version of his love interest in the party.
Yeah.
But those characters, in fairness, that love interest is also a little bit of an edgelord.
Yeah.
But in a very different way. There's a lot of interesting development to be had for characters that come somewhere for one reason and realize how much more to life there is than following one goal to a suicide mission or something in that vein.
Yeah.
Drizzt is a great example of that. Drizzt is a great example of someone who came with a goal and left with so much more than that.
And moreover, someone who looks cool and edgy but actually has more
heart
layers
to them, yeah.
And more heart, yeah.
Someone who has depth and dynamicness and an emotional level to them that most people wouldn't expect just looking at an edgy loner character.
Yeah.
Which I think is a great thing to have in a game. In any game. It is a great example, like you said, of how to make a character like this compelling And it is a great example of something you can add into your home game to make it more fleshed out, more full of life, and more interactive for people to have that connection or that understanding of a character that's doing the same kind of thing they are. An adventurer with a lot more experience, probably, and a lot to offer them in contact and communication and connection.
Yeah, and always feel free, make your own character. But sometimes, especially if your party knows who Drizzt is.
Yeah.
I remember the first time when I was, for you, the people that we were playing with,
yeah,
for that game,
yeah,
the Throwing Thunder game,
mm-hmm.
It was an audible, freak out reaction when I said he introduced himself as Drizzt.
I was like, oh my god, I know who that is. I remember you being like, you know who that is?
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I know who that is. That's Drizzt. That's the most famous Drow. And you were like, why do you know that? The answer to that is because I read the entire Drow Wikipedia page because I got really attached to one specific character once.
Yeah.
Who was not Drizzt. And you were like, why do you know that? And I was like, because I love Drow so much. Drow might be my favorite race.
But yeah,
or even, sub-race, but just in general. I'm attached.
Drizzt is good.
It's Drow and Tieflings, I like those.
And Drizzt is a really good thing to use.
Yes. Good storytelling tool, good kind of narrative tool, good representation, good example, in a lot of ways, which all of that is relevant and useful.
Yeah, I love Drizzt. I think he is really fun to use. I think he is really fun, a character to watch. I think that there is a trailer that I'd love to recommend for the MTG set that is one of the coolest summaries of Drizzt's story possible.
Yeah. I remember watching that with you.
I'll
link it in the description, maybe.
We're
not sponsored.
Yes, the
books I wish we were.
Written, by the way, by R.A. Salvatore.
Yes. I read exactly one book of his when I was in middle school, and I didn't finish it because it was long.
I cannot...
But I want to read the Drizzt ones now.
...recommend or not recommend them because I have not read them.
Yeah. The only thing we really know about him is the D&D context, but that's fine.
Yes, he also wrote something called the Demon Wars Saga, apparently.
He's written a lot of stuff, I think.
Yeah,
A lot.
He has something called Corona, which that aged poorly.
That aged poorly, oops. Sad face.
He also wrote the novelization of Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the Clones.
Wow.
So...
a lot has been done here. He's got a big... he branches out a lot, apparently.
Yes, so, with that being said... that's Drizzt.
That's Drizzt.
Any closing?
I love this guy. Use this guy and lots of other characters in your home games if you want to flesh things out like that. Representation is important. Representation matters. There are people who will see themselves in that sort of thing even when it is a fantasy setting. Just keep that in mind. It's something we talked about in the last video too. People like to see themselves in things, and that is one way to do that even in a fantasy setting where it's not quite the same.
Any questions about Drizzt? Any stories about Drizzt?
Have you used him in a home game before? Have you read the books and want to tell us what the vibe is there?
Yeah, in the book specifically. I've read some summaries, but yeah.
I don't know, so you should tell me. Tell me in the comments section. Tweet it at our Twitter, College of Lore YT. Tweet it at her Twitter.
The Penitent COL. Specifically, what I would love to say as we kind of close this, I know some people, I've listened to my fair share of game tales. I've recorded them, I've listened to a lot of them.
Yeah.
There are some people out there who are very... it's kind of a consensus almost that it's cringe to include characters from Crit Role or
something like this, or any media that you follow.
Yeah.
And especially to make characters based on them or that are them to play.
Yeah, I've read a story once that was basically just bullying someone for... Their first character as a 14-year-old girl was heavily hinted at to be the daughter of Keyleth and Vax from Critical Role.
That's fine. Who cares? Don't be mean to people about it. That's stupid to be mean to someone about.
The thing is, I think with all things, I think D&D kind of has the fan fiction problem of if everyone who wanted to make a movie could make a movie as easily as to make a fanfic, the quality of movies on average would go down.
Yeah.
Just because accessibility,
Yeah.
Accessibility of fanfiction makes people perceive fanfiction worse.
Yeah.
Because there are some bad examples, people can find really bad examples.
Yeah.
Even as a whole, I think fanfiction has some amazing results.
I do too.
I say this because with using canon characters, there are some really good moments
And there's some really badly executed stuff, but that should not taint the fact that this can be used really well.
Some really bad, some really cringy, especially when you're forcing it on people that don't know the source.
Yeah.
Or when you're asking them to know college or be obsessed with this, or to know all this. Sorry, I used college instead of lore.
Yeah.
To use lore that they don't know, or to be obsessed, and watch this cool person do a cool thing.
When they don't care, yeah.
And it can go wrong with a DM using Drizzt. It absolutely can go wrong. But if you can execute it well,
then it tells a really good story, and it's a really good...
It can tell an amazing story.
It's a really good plot device.
Do automatically write everything off
in that
uses a canon character as cringe. Because I think a lot of it can be really good, and I think that's kind of the purpose of making this. Use Drizzt if you feel so inclined.
Yeah.
Because he can be an amazing character, and really, really...
He can enrich the story a lot.
Yeah. And especially for players know it can add a lot of context.
Yeah.
Without taking over the whole story.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, enjoy yourselves, with this game. Use whatever you fucking want to in your games, in your stories. These characters are yours, the story is yours, as long as you don't break copyright laws, do whatever you want. That said, this has been, Let's Talk About, the Drizzt episode, and we will see you guys on the next episode of this, and also on all the other videos on our channel. Go check them out. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for watching this video from College of Lore. Remember to like this video, subscribe to join the party, and have a fantastic adventure.